Hey there, hope you're having a wonderful day. In this video, we're going to be coding the game Pong. And this is the Atari arcade game where you have two players and you have a ball that is moving back and forth. And you need to move the paddle so that you can pass the ball back to your opponent. And the goal is to send the ball past your opponent's side. And if you do so, you gain a point. So that's how the game works, and this is what you'll get by the end of this tutorial. And before we begin coding, I just want to quickly mention that I am working on a web dev tutorial series where I teach you how to create games using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you can find the list on kennyyipcoding.com as well as on my channel. So currently I have tutorials on Flappy Bird, Space Invaders, Wordle, Sudoku, 2048, Connect 4, Candy Crush, and many more. And this one will be Pong, and my next tutorial will be Doodle Jump. Okay, so if you want to stay up to date, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Alright, let's begin coding. Start by creating three files, index.html, pong.css, and pong.js. For index.html, we're going to do doctype HTML, HTML. Within the HTML tag, let's add a head tag. In here, I'm going to set meta charset is equal to UTF-8. Meta name is equal to viewport. Content is equal to width equals device width. Initial scale is equal to 1.0. Let's also give a title to our web page. So we're going to call this Pong. Now let's also link our style sheet and our JavaScript code. Link rel equals style sheet. href is going to be pong.css. And for our JavaScript, we're going to add a script tag. Source is equal to pong.js. And this is all we need for our head tag. Now let's move into our body tag. And all we need is a canvas tag. And we're going to give it an ID of board so that we can access this canvas tag using JavaScript. So within the CSS, I'm going to style the body and just add text align center. So this is going to align the canvas to the center of the page. And I'm going to access the board ID. So this is the ID for the canvas tag. And I'm going to set the background color to black. Alright, now if I open up the index.html file, you can see we have our canvas and the background color is black. Alright, so within our JavaScript file, I want to first start by modifying the width and height of the board. So let's add some board properties here. I'm going to add a few variables, board width, and I'm going to set this to 500 pixels, and board height is going to be 500 pixels as well. And I'm going to create a variable called context. So when our page loads, I'm going to do window.onload is equal to a function, and I'm going to get board and set it to document.getElementById board. So now this variable board will reference the canvas tag with the ID board, which is over here. And through this variable, I'm going to set board.height equal to board height and board.width equal to board width. And I'm going to get the context, board.getContext 2D. So this is used for drawing on the board, which is basically the canvas. Alright, so if I refresh the page, you can see our canvas is bigger now. It is 500 pixels by 500 pixels. So now that I have my canvas, I want to add two more things in CSS, which will show the walls of the board, or rather the border. So within the board, I'm going to add border top 5 pixels, solid, and give it a color of sky blue. Border bottom, 5 pixels, solid, sky blue. So this is going to add a border to the top of the canvas and to the bottom of the canvas. So you can see we have a border top and a border bottom. So this is going to indicate to us that when the ball touches the top or bottom of the canvas, it's going to reverse course. Alright, so now that we have our canvas ready, let's start drawing the players, which are the 2 paddles. So I'm going to create some variables for the players. I'm going to set player width to 10 and player height to 50. So each rectangle is going to be 10 pixels wide and 50 pixels tall. And I'm going to create an object, player 1, and I'm going to set the X position to 10. Y position is going to be board height divided by 2. Width is going to be player width. Height is going to be player height. So these are the properties that I want to give to the paddle. And just for a quick explanation on how the canvas works, we have our canvas here, and it is 500 pixels by 500 pixels. On this canvas, this top left corner is 0, 0. And this bottom left corner is 0, 500. The bottom right is 500, 500. And the top right is 500, 0. So these are the X, Y coordinates. So earlier I said that the X coordinate would be 10. And the Y coordinate would be board height divided by 2. So this is for player 1. So what does this mean? This means that I go right by 10 pixels and I move down by board height over 2. So this is 250 pixels. So this is the X and Y coordinates of this paddle. Alright, now that we have the X and Y coordinates and the width and height for the player 1, let's draw the paddle onto the canvas. So here, draw initial player 1. First thing I'm going to do is set context.fillStyle, and I'm going to set it to sky blue. So this is going to change the color of the pen. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle, so context.fillRect, player1.x, player1.y, player1.width, and player1.height. Alright, and if I refresh the page, you can see I have a rectangle here, and it is sky blue, and the X and Y coordinates are 10 and 250, which is board height divided by 2. So basically, whenever you draw something, a rectangle, you have to supply the X and Y coordinates, and that X and Y coordinate will actually represent the top left corner of the rectangle. So it starts over here. And then you supply a width and a height. So in this case, the width is 10 and the height is 50. Alright, so now that you know how the canvas works and how to draw a rectangle on the canvas, let's talk about the game loop. So basically, every time you move the player, whether you're moving the player up or down, you are moving the paddle across the y-axis. So it's going vertically. So if you move the player up, you are moving in a negative direction. So you are subtracting. And if you move the player down, you are moving in the positive direction. So currently, the X and Y coordinates are 10 and 250. So if I move the player up, I am subtracting because I am moving towards 0. And if I move the player down, I am adding because I am moving towards 500. Now, every time we move the player, we change the Y coordinate. And in doing so, we need to update the canvas every time to show the new rectangle. And to do so, we need to use a game loop. So to create the game loop, I'm going to write request animation frame, and I'm going to call a function update. And over here, I'm going to define that function, update. and I'm going to call request animation frame update. And I'm just going to copy and paste this. So down here within our update function for player 1, I'm going to draw player 1, which is the rectangle. So currently you won't see much difference, but just note that the game loop is actually working now and that we're drawing the canvas over and over again. The only reason why you don't notice a difference is because we never changed the X and Y position of the paddle. Alright, now let's add player 2. So player 2 is going to be very similar to player 1. I'm just going to copy and paste this. Change the variable name to player 2. And all I need to do is change the X coordinate. So the X coordinate is going to be board width minus the player width minus 10. So how does that math work? Basically, we want to get the X coordinate over here, right? Because currently the Y coordinate is 250, so it is in line with the left paddle. So how can we draw the X coordinate here? So first we take the entire width of the board, which is board width, and then we go back 10, because over here we moved 10 forward. So on the right side we want to move 10 backwards. But the issue is this gets you the right corner of the paddle. So to get the top left corner, we need to subtract and move back the player width, which is 10. So in total, this is 500 minus 10 minus 10, which is 480. Alright, so within our update function, let's draw player 2. So it will be context.fillRect, player2.x, player2.y, player2.width, and player2.height. Alright, so if I refresh the page, you can see we have player 2 on the right side. Now what we need to do is make the paddles move up and down. So to make the paddles move, we need to first define a velocity. And a velocity is a change in position over time. So over here, I'm just going to set player velocity y to 0. And we only need velocity y because the two paddles, they can only go up and down. So you're only moving along the y-axis. And over here, I'm going to set velocity y equal to player velocity y, which is 0. And over here as well, velocity y is equal to player velocity y. By default, I'm going to make it so that the paddles do not move unless you click on an arrow key. So now that we have our velocity, let's add the key listener. So I'm going to do document.add event listener. It's going to listen for a key up, basically when you press on a key and you let go, and it's going to call a function move player. So function move player, it's going to listen for an event. So let's name that variable e. So for player 1, which is on the left side, I'm going to do if e.code is equal to key w, I'm going to set the velocity. So player 1 dot velocity y is equal to -3. Else if e.code is equal to key s, player 1 dot velocity y is equal to +3. Let's also do the same thing for player 2. So if e.code is equal to arrow up, I'm going to set player 2 dot velocity y to -3. Else if e.code is equal to arrow down, then we're going to set player 2 dot velocity y to +3. Okay? So here, before we draw the rectangle, I'm going to do player 1 dot y is equal to player 1 dot velocity y. And for player 2 dot y plus equal player 2 dot velocity y. Alright, now if I refresh the page and I press W, we expect player 1 to move up, And as you can see, player 1 is indeed moving up. And if I press arrow down, we expect player 2 to move down. Now the issue here is we did not clear the canvas every time we redraw it. And so you can see all the drawings are overlapping. So let's go ahead and clear the canvas. And clearing the canvas is very simple. All we need to do is context.clear_rect, and it's going to be 0, 0, board.width, and board.height. So this is the x and y coordinate. So 0, 0 is the top left corner, and board width and height is the width and height of the rectangle that we want to clear. In this case, it is 500 and 500, so we are clearing the entire rectangle, which is essentially the entire canvas. Alright, now if I refresh the page and I press W, you can see the player goes up, and if I press S, the player goes down. And same thing for the right side if I do arrow up and arrow down. Now the issue is the paddles can actually go past the top and bottom. So this is something we don't want happening. So let's add a check for that. So over here, let's define a function, out of bounds. And we're going to pass in a number representing the y position. And this is going to return true or false whether the y position is out of bounds. So it's going to return y position is less than 0, which is past the top, or y position plus player height is greater than board height. So why do we add player height? Because y position represents the top left corner. So to get the bottom left corner, we want to add player height. Alright, so now that I have my out of bounds function, I'm going to go back to the update function and comment this out. And instead, we're going to define next player 1y and set it to player1.y plus player1.velocityy. So instead of directly updating player1.y with the velocity, I'm going to calculate this value and set it to a variable. And then I'm going to make the check. So if not out of bounds, next player1y, then we are safe to update player1.y. And likewise, we're going to do the same thing for player 2. Let next player 2y equal to player2.y plus player2.velocityy. If not out of bounds, next player 2y, player2.y is equal to next player 2y. Oops, next player 2y. And let's also comment this out. Alright, so let's go take a look. Alright, so if I refresh the page and I press W, you can see we move the paddle up and it stops at the top. And if I press S, paddle goes down and stops. And if I press arrow up and arrow down, so now you can see we have our fully functional player 1 and player 2 paddles. Alright, now let's add the ball. So similar to the players 1 and 2, I need some variables for the ball. So I'm going to set ball width to 10 and ball height to 10 as well. And I'm going to create an object for the ball. So x is going to be board width divided by 2. Y is going to be board height divided by 2. Width is going to be ball width. Height is going to be ball height. And just like with player 1 and player 2, we need to define a velocity. So I'm just going to write it here. Velocity x is going to be 1, and velocity y is going to be 2. So moving left and right horizontally is going to be half as fast as moving up and down. So moving left and right, we're just going to shift it by 1 pixel, and moving up and down will be 2. In this case, since the numbers are both positive, we are going to move in a positive x direction, which is to the right, and we're going to move in a positive y direction, which is downwards. Alright, so within our update function, let's draw the ball. So we want to change the color of the pen so that we can see the difference between the paddle and the ball. So I'm going to do context.fillStyle is equal to white. And I'm going to update both ball.x and ball.y by the velocity x and velocity y. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle for the ball. Alright, so we said the ball will be over here, which is board.width divided by 2 and board.height divided by 2. And we're going to draw it here. And we said that the change in x, velocity x, is going to be 1. And the change in y, which is velocity y, will be 2. So we expect the ball to move diagonally downwards. Alright, so now if I refresh the page, you can see the ball starts in the middle and moves downwards. So what we want to do is make it so that whenever the ball touches the bottom or top, it reverse course. So basically, if the ball touches the bottom here, it should reflect, and the y velocity should be in the opposite direction. So currently it's 2. If it touches the bottom, we need to make it -2. And likewise, if it touches the top, we need to change the -2 to +2. So over here, I'm going to do if ball.y is less than or equal to 0, which is the top, or ball.y plus ball.height. Remember, ball.y is the top left corner. So to get the bottom left corner, to make sure that the bottom left corner touches the bottom of the canvas, we need to add the height. So if ball.y plus ball.height is greater than or equal to board height, which is 500 pixels, I'm going to reverse course. So all I need to do is set ball.velocity_y, multiply it by -1. So reverse direction. Okay, so if it's going with the velocity y of 2, it's going to be -2, and if it's -2, it's going to be 2. So it's just flipping. So now if I refresh the page, you can see the ball is reversing course. Alright, so now that we have the ball moving and it bounces off the top and bottom of the canvas, we now need to make the ball bounce off each paddle. So down here, I'm going to create a function to detect the collision. So it's going to be A and B. And this function will have a general formula used to detect the intersection between two rectangles. So if two rectangles intersect, that means there's a collision. So the formula is return a.x is less than b.x plus b.width. So this is A's top left corner doesn't reach B's top right corner. A.x plus a.width is greater than b.x. So this is A's top right corner passes B's top left corner. A.y less than b.y plus b.height. this is A's top left corner, doesn't reach B's bottom left corner. And finally, A dot Y plus A dot height is greater than B dot Y, and this is A's bottom left corner, passes B's top left corner. Okay, so this is how you detect the intersection between two rectangles. When we detect collision, we want to detect which side the collision came from. So to detect which side the collision happens, we need to get the right side of the paddle 1. So on the left, we check for the right side. We want to make sure that the right side of paddle 1 touches the left side of ball. So here is the x coordinate. To get to the right side, we do player1.x plus the width. So we want to make sure that the width plus x is touching the left side of the ball, which is just ball.x. And for player 2, and so for the right side, it is something similar, but the ball is on the opposite direction. So we want to make sure that the ball touches the left side of paddle 2, which is just the x position. But the difference here is we are checking for the right side of the ball instead of the left side, like we did over here. So to get to the right side, we just take ball.x and add the width of the ball. Okay? Alright, so back within our update function, I'm going to scroll down, and over here, I'm going to make the check. So this is to bounce the ball back. So if we detect the collision between ball and player 1, we're going to check if ball.x is less than or equal to player1.x plus player1.width. So as I mentioned before, this is left side of ball touches right side of player 1. Then I'm going to set ball.velocity x and multiply it by -1. So this is going to flip x direction. Else, if detect collision, ball and player 2, if ball.x plus ball width, so this is the right side, is greater than or equal to player2.x, so this is right side of ball touches left side of player 2, we're going to do the same thing. Ball.velocity x, multiply it by -1. So this is going to flip x direction. Alright, so if I refresh the page and I move player 2, you can see I pass the ball back, and the ball bounces from the top, and I can move the paddle down, and you can see we have pretty much a functional game of Pong. Alright, now that we have a fully functional game of Pong, let's add the score. So to keep track of the score, we need some variables. So player 1 score, I'm going to initialize that to 0, and player 2 score, this is also going to be 0. And then within the update function, we're going to check. So how do we get a point? All you really need to do is send the ball past your opponent's side. So game over for each round looks like this. If ball.x is less than 0, meaning the x position is past the left side of the canvas, then we're going to give player 2 a point. And for player 2, else if ball.x plus ball width, and the reason we add the width is because we want to check the right side of the ball. If it passes board width, then player 1 gets the point. So let's draw the scores. I'm going to set context.font equal to 45 pixels sans serif. And then let's draw. So context.fill text, player 1 score. I'm going to set an X position of board width divided by 5 and a Y position of 45. And for player 2 score, we're going to do player 2 score board width times 4/5 minus 45. So 45 is the width. It's going to be the pixel size of the font. So I want it to be 1/5 and 4/5 for the X position. But to get it to be 4/5, I need to start from the left side. So I need to subtract the width of the text. Alright, so I refresh the page and I'm going to move the paddle up here. You can see the score is incrementing. And that is because we did not reset the game every time each player scores. So let's do that. Alright, so down here, let's define a function called resetGame. And it's going to take in a direction. And this direction is going to be the new velocity x for the new game. So the rule I'm going to set here is the ball will change direction based on who the winner is. So if player 1 wins, the ball is going to go towards player 1. And if player 2 wins, it's going to go towards player 2. And so I'm going to go up here and copy this object, put it here, and so we are going to reset the object for the ball, and instead of velocity x being 1, I'm going to set it to direction. And then up here, I'm going to call reset game. So reset game is going to be 1, meaning it's going to the right. And over here, reset game is going to be -1. Alright, let's stop this counter and refresh the page. Alright, so now if I let the ball go to the right side, then it's going to head towards the winner, which was player 1. So let's try to make it go towards, oops, not again. Okay, let's try this time. So let's try to make player 1 get a point. I mean player 2. And as you can see, the score goes up and it goes in the opposite direction. Okay? And you can change the code however you like for the ball. So this is a fully functional game of Pong with the scoring. I just want to add one more thing, and that is the dotted line in the middle. So within the update function, I'm going to add the dotted line down the middle. So this doesn't affect gameplay. This is more for visuals. So for let I equal 10, I less than board.height, I plus equal 25. So this is saying I, starting Y position, draw a square every 25 pixels down. So context.fillRect, board.width, divided by 2, minus 10, I, 5, and 5. So what does this mean? X position is always going to be in the middle, so it's going to be half of board width minus 10, and then I is the Y position, and width is 5, and height is 5. Alright, so we have our dotted line, and we have a fully functional game of Pong. And if you found this tutorial helpful, please give this video a like, and make sure you subscribe for more videos like this in the future. And you can make any edits you want to the code, I encourage you to continue working on the project. After this tutorial, you can make it so that perhaps every time a player scores, the ball goes faster. So you can change the speed of the ball. You can also change the width and height of the paddle if you wish. So this is all up to you. But yeah, I'll see you later.